Good morning and afternoon to everyone. Hi, my name is Sean, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to this RSA Solutions webcast. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to make an investment in your business. Obviously, if you're here, you're interested in doing better, and that's what this is all about. And so today we're going to be focusing in on an amazing technology called Planity. And I think that we'll be able to answer the question today, why should you consider an automated inventory and purchasing solution for your business? I'm really excited also to let you know that we have as a panelist for today, Mr. Quentin Petty, owner of Techwood Solutions. I'll introduce Quentin in just a little bit. So with that said, what I would like to do is take just a moment and help you with a little bit of navigation in order to see some additional opportunities that are out in front of you as well. You might notice, if you're looking at my screen, that I'm highlighting on our website at rsasolutions.com. And from this main page, what you'll easily see, not only in the scrolling bar, information about various solutions, but you'll see that, for example, today's webcast featuring Planity is highlighted. We have also another one scheduled for the 9th of February at 1 p.m., and that will be Production Coach. Then on the 16th of February for our project management solution called Project. And then on February 23rd, the planning and scheduling webcast featuring planning assistant. So just want to make you aware that there are additional educational opportunities out in front of you. And I can tell you that our team is working hard on the scheduling and planning of a number of what we call factory tours, where you will have opportunity to see various technologies live and in action at customer facilities. I'm just going to scroll down on our homepage a little bit in case you're not familiar necessarily with all of the ways that RSA Solutions can help you do better in your business. You'll notice that these 9 areas probably would be kind of familiar to things that you're either doing or maybe considering doing in the near future, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's needing help with takeoff and estimation, whether it's need for help with project management, planning and scheduling, purchasing and inventory, tracking, sorting, kitting, those kinds of things, automating shipping and job site tracking, business intelligence and big data, or even business financing and banking. And so we have some really great ways that you might want to investigate and to see if there are opportunities to do business better. Under the Solutions tab, I'm going to skip down to one here that says Employee Retention Credit. And the reason that I want to highlight that to you is that we have found that a vast number of our customers not only have W-2 employees, but are not really aware of or don't know how to take advantage of a program that is part of the CARES Act passed by Congress. I'm sure many of you are familiar with or heard of, hopefully took advantage, if you could, of programs like PPP, and that was the Payroll Protection Plan. And so for many companies, that was something handled by local banks and enabled them to be able to get funding for their business as long as they were retaining employees. It was set out as initially a loan, but if you proved that you did have those payroll expenses, then it became a grant. So it was a really great plan. Second program of the CARES Act that you may be familiar with is called EIDL, and in this case, it's a low-interest, long-term SBA loan. Really great in a lot of ways. Many participated in it, even though banks were not generally part of it. They either self-qualified or utilized CPA. to be able to help them with the EIDL loans. Only downside is, even though it's deferred, low interest, and over a long period of time, it is something that has to be paid back. But for many, they either do not know or do not understand what is ERC and how to qualify. And part of the problem is that neither your bank nor your CPA can likely help you. While it is relative to you having W-2 employees, often there is, payroll company, accounting, all these kinds of things that are needed to have expertise in an area to be able to help you with this. So here's the bottom line. If you self-qualify for the ERC program, you can get up to $26,000 per employee. And let me just tell you, it does not mean, despite what your CPA might have told you, it does not mean that you had to have a reduction of income during those periods of time. It does mean that you had a business that started before the pandemic and that you have W-2 employees, but there is a number of ways that you can qualify for this. For example, maybe you had to close down a little period of time if COVID hit inside of your business. Maybe you couldn't go and attend functions or meetings that you would have liked to have done that could have helped you with business development. Maybe you couldn't even be meeting in the same way face-to-face with people important to your company. There's a number of ways. And so two things that I've done here on the website, you'll see that there's a short little explainer video. Encourage you to watch that. And then we've created a button for you to self-qualify. We partnered with or promote a company that is called ERC Specialists. They're one of the largest in the United States. They have people on their payroll actually from the IRS. They know how to get you qualified, and they know how to get you the money. And so I just want to encourage you today that if you have not taken care of, and most haven't taken advantage of the ERC, the third leg of the CARES Act, I want to encourage you to do that today. So with that said, I know that for many of you, you're super busy, and it's hard even when we do a lot of time to come to a webcast to really get focused in on it. And so I want you to just take a moment, and I want you to think about this. Why am I here? And why am I considering or looking at an automated inventory and purchasing system? And so a few little things that I think might be helpful for you to be thinking about it is you probably have a design solution. Maybe you have a Cadnavision or a Microvellum or an EMOS or a WoodCAD CAM or whatever you have for a CAD CAM system on the front. Realistically, it's not connected to accounting. So we know that if that is a true statement, that we have some islands of information for sure. I also know that when I survey customers in this woodworking space, that many or most are utilizing QuickBooks. However, QuickBooks is not a very good inventory system. Even if you get their advanced inventory, it's not really very advanced. For example, it's not just what we have on hand, but also where is it? There's not interaction with the shop floor. So whether it's persons in receiving or it's people pulling materials to bring it into WIP or moving materials from one location to another, it really just isn't a satisfactory tool for our industry. Also, it's not really connected to scheduling. And so if a job or an order needs to push back into the schedule or needs to be brought forward for some kind of a rush, the communications are all disconnected one with another. And even if you do utilize your CAD CAM system up front to generate a BOM or a bill of materials that maybe gets sent to accounting, and maybe you give them an idea of when it should be ready for materials available so you can begin production, the schedules can change. And so realistically, when you're only looking at it from a BOM report, from a CAD/CAM system, the purchasing is rather limited in what they could do. Now, maybe could they go to the shop floor and look around and try to figure out what materials that you do have on hand? Do they really know what might be allocated for other jobs? Do they know where it is? There's a number of things about inventory and availability that when we're looking at it only singular, based on a BOM output, that we're really, really limiting ourselves. And so Planity takes care of all of those things. You know, it's not just important to know what to go looking for, but where do you look? How can you know for absolute sure? And what if an order date changes for a number of projects? You know, that does happen in our industry a little bit, since we're one of the last onto the job site. And so managing all of those things requires a lot of complexity. And so what do? We do the best that we possibly can. But the question is, do you want to do better? I want to paint a little picture. I'm going to pick on my wife for just a moment of something that I think might get this down to the most simple terms for you today. So my wife's name is Leslie. Here's the reality of what happens. She does at least some of our grocery shopping, and to help you understand the dynamics of what I might think of as inventory is that we have 3 refrigerators. We have one in our house, one in our garage, and one in our outdoor kitchen. We have a microwave cabinet that happens to have a double door up or above, and it has doors with 3 pull-outs or roll-outs down below. We have a pantry cabinet as well. And so what ends up happening sometimes is that she's busy, she's running around, she goes to the grocery store and she starts filling things up in her cart. And admittedly, sometimes she doesn't take full inventory of what it is that we do have on hand. And even if she did glance to see what we have, she probably didn't take the time to check the date on every imaginable thing. So what does she do? She goes to the grocery store, she fills up her cart, spends a whole bunch of money, especially in these times with severe inflation. If anybody believes the 7%, I don't think that that's even close with the price that we're seeing for utilities and groceries and gas and those kind of things. But irregardless, she goes and spends a bunch of money. She comes home and begins to put the stuff away. Well, the running joke in our house used to be that she was the sour cream queen, meaning that she always had this fear in the back of her mind that we might be out of sour cream, so she would always buy more. However, we always had multi-containers of sour cream. And so once in a while, I would go along and I would start pulling canisters of sour cream out of the refrigerator and stacking those up. And some of them were out of date. Sometimes we just had way too many of them, and we needed to reserve space for stuff that we actually needed. And so hopefully you can get the picture here that if you don't have a way to be able to see and to understand what you have for materials and all of the orders that might possibly be consuming some of these amounts and exactly where things are, you can find yourself not buying or not making purchasing decisions in the very most effective way possible. So thank you for humoring me with that. I just was hopeful that I might be able to paint a little mental picture and something that would relate to our everyday life. Those are things that we have to do within our homes, and for sure we have the same kinds of challenges within our business. How can we do it better? Well, what if there was a way that we could connect your design or engineering solution directly to QuickBooks for all the financial transactions, but also provide a really, really robust way to be able to look at, to manage, and to communicate all the things related to materials, including inventory and locations. Imagine that on Friday, I think a lot of our customers have meetings on Friday and they're looking at their schedule for next week and trying to figure out what needs to be pushed back because of various reasons or pulled forward or whatever it is, trying to really get the production schedule done well. there's a number of things involved in those decisions, but certainly one of those things is materials. And what if you had complete and perfect visibility of not only everything that you have, but also exactly where all of those items are. So you can know for absolute sure that you are ready to lock in your schedule for those items. Also, imagine that when it does come time to run production and it's time to start moving materials into WIP, that you had an absolute simple way to be interacting with the people out on the floor that are going to be pulling materials, and how much and to what WIP locations. All of those kind of things. Imagine it just becoming seamless and having an amazing tool to improve communications, to give you better visibility, to make better purchasing decisions along the way. And so that's what Planity is all about. And it's my great pleasure today that I would like to introduce you to someone that I consider to be a dear friend, a trusted business partner. He's one of the smartest people that I've ever met in our industry and space, and someone that I have a lot of trust to take care of our customers. And he happens to be, again, the owner of Techwood, who is our development partner for this technology. And his name is Mr. Quentin Petty. Quentin, are you able to hear me today okay?
Yes, thank you, Sean.
Wonderful. I'm going to make you presenter, so you should get a request to be able to display your screen.
I'm working on it.
Okay, perfect.
Did that show through?
Yeah, I can see it perfect. So everyone, I know that you're on mute, but welcome, Quentin. Today, I really appreciate you taking your time. Thank you for joining us to spend with us here so we can help those that are making an investment of their time working on their business, not just in their business today, how they can understand how to do things better. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thanks for the introduction, Sean, and to all the people contributing some of their time today to review with us. I'm glad I can share.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'm going to let you, if you don't mind, to describe what it is that we're seeing on your screen.
So it's just a simple graphic, and I think actually you covered a lot of it already, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that although Planity is primarily a solution for inventory control and purchase planning, the key attribute on is that it's doing all of this by connecting data on the front side with engineering solutions. I'm just demonstrating cabinet vision here as an example because that's the data set I have today. And on the back side for the accounting, QuickBooks. So it's really trying to bring all the data sets that already exist for companies together and be able to access them in one user interface.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that. I would also mention for those of you who are attending that might be customers of Production Coach or Planning Assistant, this also would connect all of these systems together. So that is something that I want you to be aware of. And of course, if you want to dig into more details about your particular application and how you might want interactions to work, certainly reach out to us after the webcast. So Quentin, if you would you just give us a basic understanding of, for example, this UI? What are we seeing from one pane to another, just from a general kind of a standpoint of graphical or GU interface?
Yeah, this is the desktop version, and a lot of the admin functions happen inside of here, and most of the engineering interaction, etc., happens through this UI. And we'll take a look at it. I'm assuming we'll explore some of the shop floor functionality. In there, we switch into a web-based UI. I think something else interesting to mention is that all of the data, doesn't matter if it's the desktop UI or the web UI, is all housed on the cloud on Azure in a SQL database. So there's the data, and then all of the document storage, etc., is all online and secured.
Awesome.
So that, yeah.
I think that that's good for the moment. I know I'm just kind of shooting from the hip, but when I think about a lineal process, and obviously there's time gaps and a number of things that go in between. But what I'd like to have you show us today is what it would be like if we were consuming a BOM from an engineering source, whether that be a microvellum, that be a woodcut cam, an EMOS, a cabinet vision, a Cutright, what that would be like. And if I understand this correctly, Quentin, in actual use, there's no import, export kind of stuff. It's actually synced to the database. But for today, could you help us see what it would be like to bring in a bill of materials from, for example, cabinet vision?
Yeah, sure. So it is actually all happening in the background. Here's a number of integrations that we do work on. Because I know that we wanted to show this, I've kind of staged this. So I disabled actually the import on purpose. So this would normally be running in the background. So at the moment, you can see I have no projects in the system at all. So I'm going to go ahead and enable it. Of course, the application takes a little bit to recognize that it's supposed to be doing something. So if I refresh here, it did recognize that there is some data available from Cabinet Vision in this case, and it established the structure of the project. So inside of this project that was designed, it has a number of rooms, and inside each of those rooms now it is going to start collecting the engineering bill of material. I'm betting if I go here for right now, there's nothing in here, but it's going to start in a couple of seconds to populate that. This would normally be running in the background, but I just wanted to be sure that people could recognize we were doing it real time. So I stalled long enough, Sean, and basically attached to this order that was created from Cabinet Vision, it's recognized all of the bill of material. And it's kind of intimidating because the list is so long. And the reason is we basically bring it in exactly as it is inside of the engineering solution, Cabinet Vision in this case. So that's it. From a user perspective, they actually don't have to do anything. It's going to populate all of this in, use some rules. So it's created an order, it's given a status of demand review. So we're telling the user basically, we need you to check this information.
Nice. While you're on the screen, I see something that I'd like for us to cover. So here, it looks like we have basic scheduling functionality so that we could be putting various dates into the system, such as when do we want to start production, because the idea would be that we want to have just-in-time materials or have them a certain number of days before we intend to start. And so would you help us understand that logic a little bit?
Sure. It's actually it's very simple. Let's put it that way. So the key input that we're taking is when do we want to deliver, and then these are basically a backward schedule to the production start date, and this is basically important for MRP because this is actually our target date with perspective to planning the purchasing of items. And then beyond this, then we calculate additional offsets on the lead times for that particular item from that particular vendor, etc. So that's going to get to purchase request dates, basically. So it's fairly simple tool. And then I guess another key thing is that we are able to integrate, I think you mentioned already with Planning Assistant, for example, that these dates actually get inherited from Production Coach, for example, and then pushed back to calculate these start dates, which is basically the end date for purchasing.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. No, I think that makes good sense. So we've got some simple logic that we can apply so that we're not having to, from a purchasing standpoint, necessarily pick dates that we need it. We're able to go from a delivery date and have the system then look backwards so that we know that we have materials there. And so, for example, if I had a reason that I wanted all materials available no less than 5 days before production start, I could do that.
So this, yeah, that's this one here. So this is the offset between production and having the materials available. So there's some different controls, and these can all be set per company, and that just applies the default. But per order, you can go and basically customize the logic for that one.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now we have the information that came from Cabinet Vision. And so do I call that demand, or are we still at BOM?
Yeah, actually, we don't call this demand yet. You'll notice I have two separate tabs here, and this demand tab is actually empty right now. The reason for that is we try and keep it flexible between engineering and MRP. So we do want to gather, all this wealth of information that we took, great care in developing an engineering solution. But we do want to leave things open to be able to manipulate how this looks before we plan with it. So for example, I'm going to just do a couple of things. This is the suggestion we got from Cabinet Vision. So if I take this pull, for example, I'm going to mention or mark in the system that this one is actually going to be custom for some reason, and custom beyond what Cabinet Vision was able to notify me about. So, and because it's custom, I'm just for demonstration, I'm going to make a note about it. We could be attaching documents as well. So in this case, I'm just going to make a note here. And these carry through the system, basically, through purchasing and back all the way into inventory. So that's just an example of something that we can do to edit. There's also, for example, substitutions. So if engineering proposed a certain hinge, and I know that I'm substituting it with something else, but it doesn't affect the engineering, I can take those and switch them out. So at this point, I'm going to assume that I have all of the manipulations done, and now I'm going to use all of that information to generate the demand. So now I have a set of demand that is ready to be worked on and evaluated in the system. I can also use the system to basically manually add items. So I'm going to just find something from my item master, and we're going to just add that, say that we need to purchase that as well. I could change quantities, et cetera, et cetera. So this is still customizable. And we are tracking at this point that it is being modified, who modified it and when it was modified, just in case there's some sort of discrepancy. I did miss mentioning that, Sean, all of these ones are actually doors or fronts, and they were auto-generated in the system. And on the right-hand side here, there's a product ID. So we're actually tracking this demand item all the way to the ID of the product that was engineered inside of Cabinet Vision. And this will pass all the way through an inventory, relieving, and the whole workflow.
Yeah,
Sure.
a few things, Quentin. By the way, that's really awesome. I don't know of another solution that is able to get at that kind of a level. So here in this case, in case that it's not obvious, this set of data happened to have buyout doors. And so what I believe in general would have happened otherwise is that engineering would have made some kind of a report from Cabinet Vision and sent it to a door vendor, and probably purchasing made like one line item to say, hey, I need doors for this project, and no way to ever be able to interact individually with those items. It would be way too tedious in a QuickBooks to be able to do that, but now you've done it automatically. Do I have that right?
That's absolutely it. So all that was in the system, and I should maybe have shown this ahead, was this. This is the door style. It's kind of a master. It's like a template. And then when this order came through, all of these blue highlighted ones, which are this list on the right, it's basically all of the dimension and material variations were created on the fly, and we kind of kept track of the purchasing rules, et cetera, that get inherited from the parents.
So I want to see if I got this right, if you don't mind, and then I want to make a couple of other comments. So let's say that I'm at receiving and I'm checking in a door order, and a particular door actually has a damage to it. So I could receive as good everything except for that one that was damaged, and actually have real traceability and communication back to vendor or to purchasing for that particular item.
Yeah, so once it becomes a project item, is what our term is, it is tracked. It can be tracked either to an order and a product, or just an order, or its generic inventory. So depending on the type of item and whether it's custom or not, we have those different levels of resolution all the way
Wonderful.
through. So as you're moving in through inventory locations and distributing from inventory into production, it's all, it tracks that level.
Awesome. I also noticed that you added an item. So just as an example, in Cabinet Vision, it might be kind of weak at being able to get the appropriate amount of moldings, or maybe corables, or maybe even countertops. So what I believe that you showed with that special pull is that not only can you consume the BOM or the bill of material from Cabinet Vision, you can edit it, or you can add materials for purchase directly to it.
Correct, and manipulate something that was in there, so change the quantities, and you can ignore it. So if you know that for some reason on a previous job you had leftovers and it wasn't accommodated in inventory, of course not a good practice, but if you had that knowledge, we can manipulate this. Then there's another level of manipulation later on where you can just manipulate the purchase order itself.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so it's kind of letting my mind wander a little bit here. So we've gotten the demand, we scheduled it, we have created our custom items to the list, and so now I would imagine that for a lot of customers, they might have some things that I would call inventory items, and some things that I would think as just purchase items. So what I mean by that, or an example is, maybe I keep some 3/4 white mel, 2 sides, 5/8, or whatever it is in stock. Maybe I buy hinges by boxes or whatever it is, but I might have other things such as these, doors that are specific to this order, or maybe corables or something that are really just purchase items. And so how can the system help me with those two different types of materials?
Yeah, I can demonstrate that. So the first thing just to mention here is that this order still has a demand review status. So just keep that in mind for a moment, because even though between us, we know that this is ready, we haven't told the system that just yet. So we do have a workbench here, items to purchase. And if I refresh, you'll notice that there's no requirements or it has no suggestions at the moment. And that's for project items. And for inventory items, you'll notice that there actually are some items here already. Key to note is that the demand for all of these is 0 yet, but there's a safety stock that has not been met. So that's the reason we have some already being suggested to purchase. So we have a safety stock of 15, but on hand we have 0, so it's suggesting 15. So I'm going to go ahead now and by the way, there is a workbench for handling all the scheduling and so on. I'm kind of sticking in this single form just so that it's a little less confusing. So I firmed this order now. So now the system knows, okay, these are legitimate and ready to purchase. So it's another trigger in the background. So for project items, so if I ask now, we see actually this is exactly what you were talking about, all the doors, and these are project specific. So it's for a specific order. We can see the IDs here. And on top of that, it's for a specific product. So this door is going on product ID 5, for example. It has established the default vendor, if you can keep note of that as well. And if I go to the inventory items now, you'll notice when I refresh this, the list is longer now. The reason is it's now accounting for all the demand and the scheduled dates, etc., that was related to that order that I changed the status. So you can see the suggested values. Now we have a number of them that actually have demand. Okay, this first one, as an example, had a safety stock of 15. Our engineering requested another 1, so that's how we're getting a suggestion of 16. So this is basically a little workbench where we can get a view of what the system is thinking that we need. So if we shifted dates on orders and then refresh this, it's going to either reduce or increase this list. From here, the next step in the workflow is taking all of those suggestions and then turning them into purchase orders. So if I refresh here, you can see I have no purchase orders in the system at the moment. So I'm going to ask the system to generate suggestions for me. Now I'm just rambling on, Sean, so shout at me if it's not interesting. But so inside here, it processed now, generated 3 purchase order proposals. They're just proposals at this point. So vendor B, C, and A. Notice on this B is the one custom item. We highlight those just so that they kind of jump out at you. And C looks like that's all the sheet goods. And then A was all of the doors. So these can be manipulated here in the same fashion. You can add, you can change the quantities, etc. But let's assume that this purchase order is good. So the next thing that we want to do is communicate this with QuickBooks. So I'm going to go ahead and push this to QuickBooks. I should have mentioned ahead, but this was blank before. Now I have an ID here. This is the link into QuickBooks. I have QuickBooks open in the background. Inside, I'm hoping, I think it was vendor C. So the last one created was this one. Okay, so I created from Planity this purchase order. So there's 4 items in there. You can see the 4 items here with the related quantities. So we created that, real time into QuickBooks, and we didn't have to, manually create a report and type those in. So once you have your purchase orders created, and you can have this in the workflow to do this automatically, but we're just going to tell the system that those have been created. There's some things that happen in the background to kind of avoid making changes where you shouldn't, etc. So that's basically the purchase planning part, Sean. So we're getting the demand from engineering, manipulating it, and then eventually pushing those over systematically into QuickBooks.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I talk about Friday meeting sometimes as a good example, and I'm not necessarily looking for you to show me, just maybe let's talk about for a moment what this tool could help me do. Let's say that I have a woodworking company and I've assembled some of my project managers and my operations manager or plant manager, and we're trying to decide what can we do in order to schedule production. What can I do next week versus what I can't? Best way to help a company that probably today are saying, hey, have you checked on your stuff? Do you know if we got it? Do you know where it's at? Do we have any problems? How can we help improve that communication and visibility for customers?
Yeah, so per order, we're actually keeping track of the impact on the inventory, and you'll notice because I have a blank system, everything in here is red. So even though we have generated purchase orders, we don't actually have this inventory on hand yet. So we'll come back to this page, if that's okay, a little bit later, because right now it's saying we have a problem, and we truly do, because we haven't received those items yet.
Nice. Can I assume from that, and it'd be great to come back, but the red is to super highlight the problematic materials. So if we had all of our materials on hand, we would not have those red squares.
Correct, and it's we just use a very simple red-green. Red for problem, green you're good to go. And when you are doing this in production, you'd probably filter so that you only see the exceptions. At least that's what I would suggest. So everything that's good, you probably just don't need to know about it. You just need to know which ones are a problem, basically.
Nice, I like it. Friday meetings made better. Perfect. So,
Yes.
So now we've issued some purchase orders, and eventually we're going to receive materials. And I'm assuming that we're going to switch interfaces to the web version for shop floor application or shop floor controls.
That's exactly it. The function I'm going to suggest we switch user interface. So this is the desktop one, and we can continue in here if we want, but in general, we'd be suggesting that on the shop floor we use the web application. And so this is actually a web page, and I just have it installed as app on my computer. And so anything that's basically web enabled, you'll be able to open this this site. So on the left is a toolbar. It can be collapsed on a small form machine. You might want to save space. And I'm going to keep it open today because I got plenty of real estate. But here's the main functions that we'd be working with. So receiving was the example. And that would basically be the normal starting point. So I'm just going to open a purchase order here so that you can see what it would look like. So this is a long list. This is the list that is all the custom doors for this order. Against each item in here, we kind of understand what it is we should be expecting and what it is we're actually going to receive. If we have any notes, I'll show you one in a second. This is the QR, and if we want to edit the quantities, so we'll do a sample of each of those. So this is a label if you're wanting to print and attach. I'm going to go ahead and show just a wholesale accepting this entire order into the default location. So that was it, basically the process for receiving the purchase order. For this next one, so I don't know if you can see down here, this little icon is actually red. It's just highlighting for users that there's something attached to this, some information. There could also be documents attached to the entire purchase order, but in this case, I have one attached to the purchase order line. And shown as a general theme for an order, a project, an item, a purchase order line, you can attach basically notes and documents to either of those. So in here, I wrote a simple note, a new note for demo that basically just came up for the user to check. It could be something important at receiving. It could be something important. Hey, please check with engineer when this comes in, something like that, basically. So in this one, I'm going to start with assuming that we're going to receive everything. And I'm just going to use this one as an example and say that we're receiving one short. Okay, so if I go ahead and save this, now you can see that of that purchase order, I still have this one item outstanding, which if the truck comes later on in that week to fulfill the back order, then I can go ahead and accept that one. So by default, we only show the things that are outstanding. You can change the filters to see everything that was on the order, for example. So this here, if it's empty, that means we received everything that we expected to receive. So just to be thorough, I'm just going to go ahead and quickly, excuse me, receive the last order. All right. So that's basically the receiving process. And I didn't choose locations. They're all going to the default location set in the system, but that's another attribute you can adjust when you receive. Some people receive just to the dock arbitrarily and then put away and basically use the transfers process for that, or they want to edit them here in the receiving process. Either way works.
Nice. Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest is, okay, we got the stuff off of the truck. We know that we received it, so it's now in my receiving area. And now I want to start moving some of that material. And so if you would show us what it's like to transfer materials, and also please highlight for us how we can utilize QR codes for being able to transfer items into specific areas.
Sure. I'll cover, excuse me, two of them, two forms or pages here at least to try and just describe that. So this first form has two major functions. One is to transfer inventory from one location to another, and then we can also push into WIP from here. So I just happen to know that we received all of the stuff into this location. So these are the transaction types here. And I'm just going to show pushing something to WIP for now. although this wouldn't be the preferred method. We're going to look at another method later if that makes sense against an order. So that's been pushed into WIP at the moment, and notice that it did track here the product ID and the order that was related to. The other function is to transfer from basically one location to another. So it's a similar process, but basically we're just picking the item that's needs to be moved and advising how many we're going to move the from location to location, and then we transfer it over. So that's now available at this location. You don't have to move everything. You can move just a partial quantity as well. So now we have inventory at 2 different locations. I guess that's an important point, Sean, is that the location tracking is able to handle multiple items at a location, and a location, so multiple items can be at one location, and a location can have any list of items, and items can be spread across as many locations as needed. So we don't have to have a dedicated location. So it'll check all of the splits. So sometimes if you had to, you could find inventory at 3 locations if needed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This is the transfer, and then to WIP. And cycle counting is another page I think will be used quite often. And basically here we have a current inventory, and then we want to validate that. Actually, I'm going to change this for a second. You asked me to show the barcode scan. I have a barcode for this location, A101. So inside here, we're at A102. Sorry. So I had to wake the scanner up. So I scanned this, which would normally be the barcode that's on the location itself. You can see that it loaded the location. And I don't know if you notice on this side here, it's preemptively gone to scanning the item itself. So we can scan locations and items, and the barcodes have a prefix, so we know what it is the user is scanning, basically. Actually, I realized I jumped to cycle counting and not explained. It's basically a way for us to validate what the system thinks is at a location versus what's actually there. So how I suggest using this is that we basically start with the assumption that everything is at the location, and then we can do the actual physical count, and then from there we're able to edit any exceptions. So here's an exception that's okay, we actually have one more of these available. So if I go ahead and save those changes, it went from 43 to 44. So this one here, especially in initial setup, will be used a lot, but this is kind of a maintenance tool. We've been doing a lot of transactions, Sean. I apologize, I didn't mention that all of these are actually being tracked. Every receipt, transfer, relieve, all of them are tracked kind of from where to where, who did it, is the order related, a product related, is there, and then the type. And these are important when we communicate back to QuickBooks, all of these transactions. So this log is just run continuously in the background.
Nice. So we've received, we ordered materials, we've received materials, we've transferred materials, and we've even moved some materials to WIP or work in progress, like we're running. And so at some point, we're going to want to relieve materials.
So the truth is, once we transfer into WIP, the relieving for the most part, unless the exceptions, happens automatically. But I'm going to try and show this in a manual version. So here you can see there's this one that we moved into WIP in a previous screen. So we can also collect into WIP from this screen. So for example, if you're looking at an order and you want to know where, I guess this is important, where the inventory related to that order can be found. So either we're just generically pushing into production or we're pulling it for a specific order. So this version I'm showing you is pulling for a specific order. So the bill of materials says that I need, I plan for one sheet of this material on this order. So this function here will tell me that, okay, I can find those at this location. There's 16 of them currently available. So I'm gonna transfer, just to make it different, I guess. I'm gonna transfer 3 of them into WIP. So now you can see there's 3 of them available in WIP, but it hasn't been consumed. So I can consume this manually, but if it's okay, I'm going to kind of demonstrate it, how it would handle this in the automatic version. So again, it's status driven. So if this order is currently in the firm, which is basically ready to produce, once it's actually being produced, and by the way, this would normally come from production coach, right, or some similar solution that's running the production side. So now we know that this order is complete. You can see consumed is still 0, but the system's going to recognize that, and then pretty soon it'll identify, okay, there are some available. Actually, it's gone already, it found. So now in WIP there's only 2 left, and it consumed the one that I planned.
Nice, that's awesome. And so you referenced production coach. If I can, I would like to just give an example of a real live customer situation that has both production coach and Planity. Happens to be Innovation Cabinetry out of Tampa, Florida. And so what they wanted set up in their system was that when they had started cutting an order at the saw, they wanted Planity to consume or to relieve the sheet stock. When they had started running the order at edge banding, they wanted Planity to consume the edge band material. And when they had started at assembly, to consume all of the hardware. And as a final example, any things that didn't fall into those categories, when it got to shipping, then it would consume any of the additional items. So that's a great way to describe, I believe, the interaction that can happen between Planity and Production Coach as well. That makes sense, Quentin?
Yeah, it is configured. There's a workbench for configuring this. Actually, the eagle-eyed might have noticed that I have a WIP quantity here of 1, but it didn't consume any, and it did consume here. So that's an example of a configuration setting, just to kind of highlight the kind of ability to control. So here, this relieve by status is turned off for that particular item. So because of that, I typically would not suggest you do this, but you might want to have that functionality. So we basically told the system, don't automatically try and consume this. We want the user, for whatever reason, we've decided to manually go here and actually relieve this inventory. So
Awesome.
there's a configuration on statuses and different controls per per item.
Awesome. So I've noticed from looking at the clock that we're just over our 1 hour mark. So it looks to me like we've consumed the bill of materials, we've created our purchase orders, we've received materials, we've transferred materials, we've moved them to WIP, and we've even then consumed materials. Is there anything else that would be super important for us to know or see today before we end the webcast?
Yeah, I think there's one, knowing that we have all the document and note handling. I think there are some other communication tools, for example. So there is a chat functionality. I think people are kind of familiar with this functionality, and it's the same tool inside of the web version, so we can communicate between users, can have groups like a machining or edge banding team or something like that. Yeah, I think that covers the highlights. Sorry.
If I got this right, so you can attach documents and you can do chat.
Correct, and the notes and the documents you'll see all over the place, and they are like, here's notes and documents. So this is the note and document against the order itself. And so all different levels, you can attach those and they carry on through. So people on the shop floor can see them. We can put some rules, whether they have to be read before you can receive an item, for example. So there's some logic behind them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Quentin. I really, really appreciate you taking the time with us today for this. Because we did run over just a little bit of our allotted 1 hour time, I will just state that for those of you who ask questions during the webcast, when the webcast is over, because we have those in a written form, we will get back to you with precise answers for those things. And so that will help us cut down the last part of the webcast. I apologize for going over a little bit, but there was a lot of information shared, and Quentin, I just think you did an amazing job helping us understand how or why we might want an automated system for inventory and purchasing. So thank you very much for that, Quentin.
Pleasure.
Awesome. So I want to leave you with this, a little action item. So you're here today, you came to learn, you probably did learn something and see for sure what is unique to Planity, especially for some of that deeper level integration with your systems. And so the question becomes, is your business doing good enough, or do you want to do better? And if you want to do better, my suggestion is reach out to us. Let's spend a little bit of time together. Let's talk about your particular situation and how we can help you achieve that better. So that being said, I want to thank you so much for attending today. I really do appreciate it very much. Please check out rsasolutions.com for other information and or educational event opportunities. With all of that said, I wish you the very best day possible. Take care and God bless.